Courage over fear, always. By AI Audiobooks Empire. Introduction. Courage over fear, always. Life is a battlefield of choices, and fear is often the loudest opponent. It whispers doubts, magnifies obstacles, and convinces the heart that failure is inevitable. Fear is cunning, it does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers softly, planting seeds of hesitation that grow into forests of regret. It tells us that tomorrow is safer than today, that silence is wiser than speaking, that retreat is better than advancing. Yet courage, like a steady flame, burns through the fog of fear. Courage is not the absence of trembling knees or racing hearts. It is the decision to move forward despite them. As the proverb says, "He who is brave is free." Courage is the unseen force that transforms ordinary men and women into extraordinary testimonies of strength. It is the mother who rises before dawn to provide for her children, the student who studies by candlelight despite poverty, the leader who speaks truth even when silence would be safer. Courage is not reserved for warriors on battlefields. It is lived daily in the quiet, unseen choices that shape destiny. Fear seeks to paralyze, but courage liberates. Fear builds walls, but courage builds bridges. Fear says, "You cannot," but courage answers, "Watch me." Throughout history, the greatest victories were not won by those who felt no fear, but by those who chose courage in the midst of it. David faced Goliath with a sling, not because he was fearless, but because he believed in a greater strength. Rosa Parks sat firmly on a bus seat, not because she lacked fear, but because she believed in justice. Nelson Mandela endured years of imprisonment, not because fear was absent, but because courage was present. These stories remind us that courage is not the absence of fear, it is the mastery of it. As another proverb declares, courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. Fear often disguises itself as wisdom, convincing us that hesitation is prudence. But true wisdom discerns between caution and cowardice. A farmer who refuses to plant because of possible storms will never reap a harvest. Likewise, those who let fear dictate their choices remain trapped in cycles of regret. Courage, therefore, is the antidote. It teaches us to act in imperfection, to move forward even when the path is unclear. Courage is the voice that says, "Even if I fail, I will rise again." Consider the seasons of life: childhood, youth, adulthood, and old age. In each season, fear presents itself differently. The child fears rejection, the youth fears failure, the adult fears responsibility, and the elder fears irrelevance. Yet courage speaks to each season with wisdom. To the child, it says, "You are loved." To the youth, it says, "Your failures are lessons." To the adult, it says, "Your burdens are opportunities." To the elder, it says, "Your wisdom is eternal." Courage adapts, but its essence remains the same. It is the choice to rise above fear. Life experience teaches us that fear is loudest before breakthroughs. The student trembling before an exam, the parent worried about providing, the leader facing criticism all stand at the edge of growth. Fear is the gatekeeper of progress, but courage is the key that unlocks it. As the proverb reminds us, the brave man carves out his fortune, while the fearful man waits for fate. This audiobook is a journey into the timeless truth that courage is always greater than fear. Through stories, wisdom, and righteous counsel, we will uncover the principles that transform ordinary lives into extraordinary testimonies of strength. Each chapter will be a lantern illuminating the path toward boldness, resilience, and faith. By the end, you will see that courage is not a fleeting emotion, but a lifestyle, a daily choice, and a legacy worth leaving. So let us begin this journey together. Let us walk through the valleys of fear and climb the mountains of courage. Let us learn from the proverbs of old, the stories of heroes, and the lessons of life itself. And let us declare with conviction, not just as a phrase, but as a way of living, courage over fear always. Welcome to AI Audiobooks Empire, a channel dedicated to stories and wisdom that uplift, empower, and transform lives. Please like, share, and subscribe so you can continue this journey of growth with us. Now, settle in and let's begin. Courage over fear, always. Chapter 1. The Nature of Fear. Fear is a shadow, not a substance. It thrives in the imagination, painting pictures of disaster that rarely come true. Like a thief in the night, it steals peace and paralyzes progress. Fear magnifies the unknown, turning small challenges into towering giants. As the wise say, fear makes the wolf bigger than he is. When we understand fear's deceptive nature, we begin to see that it is not an enemy to be obeyed, but a challenge to be overcome. Fear is smoke without fire, a mirage without water, a shadow without substance. It has power only when we give it attention, and it grows only when we feed it with doubt. Fear often disguises itself as caution, convincing us that hesitation is wisdom. But true wisdom discerns between prudence and paralysis. A farmer who refuses to plant because of possible storms will never reap a harvest. Likewise, those who let fear dictate their choices remain trapped in cycles of regret. Courage, therefore, is the antidote that teaches us to act in imperfection, to move forward even when the path is unclear. As another proverb reminds us, he who watches the wind will never sow, and he who looks at the clouds will never reap. Fear convinces us to wait for perfect conditions, but courage teaches us that progress begins in imperfection. Life experience teaches that fear is loudest before breakthroughs. The student trembling before an exam, the parent worried about providing, the leader facing criticism all stand at the edge of growth. Fear is the gatekeeper of progress, but courage is the key that unlocks it. Think of the butterfly struggling to break free from its cocoon. The struggle is painful, but without it, the wings would never strengthen enough to fly. Fear is that cocoon it resists, it confines, it presses down. But courage is the force that breaks through, proving that growth is born in struggle. As the proverb says, smooth seas do not make skillful sailors. Fear is the storm, but courage is the sail that carries us through. Thus, the first step in conquering fear is recognizing its true nature. It is a shadow, not a wall. and shadows vanish when light shines upon them. Courage is that light. When you choose courage, you discover that fear is not a prison but a test. It is the voice that says, "You cannot." But courage answers, "I will." Fear shrinks horizons, but courage expands them. Fear says, "What if I fail?" Courage replies, "What if I succeed?" And in that reply lies the power to transform destiny. For as the proverb declares, the wicked flee when no one pursues, but the righteous are bold as a lion. Fear is universal. It touches every life, every heart, every dream. Yet courage is also universal, waiting within each soul to be awakened. The child learning to walk, the youth daring to dream, the adult facing responsibility, the elder embracing legacy, all encounter fear. But all are capable of courage. Fear is temporary. Courage is eternal. Fear fades with time. Courage leaves a legacy. Fear binds. Courage liberates. Fear silences. Courage speaks. Fear destroys. Courage builds. And so, the nature of fear is not to be obeyed but to be understood, confronted, and overcome. Chapter 2. Courage Defined. Courage is not recklessness. It is deliberate strength in the face of uncertainty. Recklessness leaps without thought, but courage steps forward with wisdom. As the proverb declares, courage is grace under pressure. It is the quiet resolve that says, "I will move forward anyway." Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the mastery of it. It is the ability to stand firm when the winds of doubt blow, to walk forward when the path is unclear, and to act when hesitation seems safer. Courage is the steady hand that holds the wheel when storms rage, the calm voice that says, "Peace, be still," even when the waves rise high. Courage acknowledges danger, but refuses to be controlled by it. It is the parent who works tirelessly despite exhaustion, the student who pursues education despite obstacles, the leader who stands for truth despite criticism. These are not fearless people. They are courageous people. Fear may whisper to them, but courage speaks louder. Fear may show them the risks, but courage shows them the rewards. Fear may remind them of their weakness, but courage reminds them of their strength. As another proverb teaches, a man of courage is also full of faith. Courage is not blind, it sees the danger clearly, but it chooses to act anyway, trusting that strength will be found in the journey. Storytelling reminds us of countless heroes who were ordinary individuals choosing courage in extraordinary circumstances. David faced Goliath not because he was fearless, but because he trusted in a greater strength. Rosa Parks sat firmly not because she lacked fear, but because she believed in justice. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke boldly not because threats were absent, but because courage was present. These stories remind us that courage is not about being extraordinary, it is about ordinary people making extraordinary choices. Courage is the spark that ignites destiny, the decision that changes history, the step that inspires generations. As the proverb says, fortune favors the brave. Courage is not reserved for battlefields or spotlights. It is lived daily in quiet choices that shape destiny. It is the worker who refuses to compromise integrity, the child who dares to dream beyond limitations, the elder who shares wisdom despite being overlooked. Courage is the decision to rise after failure, to speak after silence, to love after betrayal. When you choose courage, you discover that fear is not a prison, but a test stand. Passing the test reveals your true strength. Courage is the bridge between intention and action, between vision and reality, between hope and fulfillment. It is the daily choice to live boldly, to walk righteously, and to trust that every step taken in courage brings you closer to destiny. Courage defined is not a single act, but a lifestyle. It is not a moment of bravery, but a pattern of boldness. It is the soldier who fights for freedom, yes, but it is also the mother who nurtures with love, the teacher who inspires with truth, the leader who serves with humility. Courage wears many faces, but its essence is the same: deliberate strength in the face of uncertainty. And so, as we continue this journey, let us remember that courage is not reckless, not careless, not blind. Courage is wisdom clothed in boldness, faith clothed in action, and righteousness clothed in resolve. Chapter 3: The First Step. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. That ancient proverb carries a truth that echoes across generations. Progress is never born in perfection, but in beginnings. Fear paralyzes potential, whispering that the first step is too risky, too uncertain, too heavy to take. Fear magnifies the unknown, turning small beginnings into mountains of impossibility. Yet courage transforms hesitation into momentum. Courage whispers back, "Start anyway." It is the spark that ignites the fire of progress, the seed that grows into harvest, the first note that becomes a symphony. Many wait for perfect conditions, but perfection never comes. The soil is never fully ready, yet the farmer plants. The winds are never completely calm, yet the sailor sets sail. The student never feels fully prepared, yet the exam arrives. Life rarely offers flawless beginnings, and those who wait for them remain stuck in endless preparation. As wisdom teaches, he who watches the wind will never sow, and he who looks at the clouds will never reap. Waiting for ideal circumstances is a trap that keeps dreams locked away. Courage teaches us to act in imperfection, trusting that progress will reveal the way. The act of beginning is itself a declaration of faith that your potential is greater than your fear, that your vision is stronger than your doubt, and that your destiny is worth pursuing. Consider the stories of those who dared to begin. The writer who faced a blank page, the entrepreneur who faced an uncertain market, the leader who faced opposition all began with trembling hands and uncertain steps. Yet their beginnings became breakthroughs. Thomas Edison did not wait for certainty before experimenting with the light bulb. He began, failed thousands of times, and eventually succeeded. Abraham Lincoln did not wait for perfect conditions before entering politics. He began, endured defeats, and eventually led a nation. Their courage to begin became the foundation of their legacy. As another proverb reminds us, the man who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones. Fear often disguises itself as wisdom, saying, "Wait until you are ready." But readiness is not a condition, it is a decision. The child learning to walk is never fully ready, yet he takes a step. The young adult pursuing education is never fully prepared, yet she enrolls. The parent raising children is never fully equipped, yet he begins. Readiness is not the absence of fear, but the presence of courage. To begin is to declare, I may not have everything, but I will use what I have. Courage is the farmer planting seeds in uncertain soil, trusting that rain will come. Courage is the sailor setting sail into uncertain waters, trusting that the stars will guide. Courage is the student opening the book, trusting that knowledge will grow. The act of beginning is itself a declaration of faith. It says that your potential is greater than your fear, that your vision is stronger than your doubt, and that your destiny is worth pursuing. Beginning is not about certainty, it is about trust. Trust that growth will follow, that strength will increase, that wisdom will come. As the proverb declares, fortune favors the bold. Boldness attracts opportunity, and opportunity nurtures growth. The first step may be small, but it is the most powerful, for it breaks the chains of hesitation and sets destiny in motion. So let us define courage in its purest form, the willingness to begin. To begin when fear says wait. To begin when doubt says stop. To begin when circumstances say impossible. Courage is the light that shines on the shadow of fear, proving that beginnings are not walls but doors. And when you step through that door, you discover that the journey is not as frightening as it seemed, and that every step taken in courage brings you closer to the life you were meant to live. Chapter 4. Discipline builds strength. Courage without discipline is fleeting. It may burn brightly for a moment, but without discipline, the flame quickly fades. Discipline is the backbone that sustains courage when emotions waver, when motivation disappears, and when the journey grows long. As wisdom teaches, the hand of the diligent will rule. Discipline is the quiet force that transforms courage from a spark into a steady fire. It is the structure that keeps courage alive when fear tries to return. Discipline is choosing consistency over comfort. It is waking early to pursue goals, practicing daily even when uninspired, and holding firm to principles when compromise seems easier. Discipline is the decision to keep walking when the road feels endless, to keep sowing when the soil looks barren, to keep believing when results seem delayed. Courage begins the journey, but discipline ensures you finish it. As another proverb reminds us, diligence is the mother of good fortune. Without discipline, courage is wasted energy. With discipline, courage becomes unstoppable progress. Life experience shows that disciplined people conquer fear more easily. The athlete who trains daily fears competition less because preparation has built confidence. The student who studies consistently fears exams less because knowledge has become second nature. The leader who practices integrity daily fears criticism less because character has been forged in consistency. Preparation breeds confidence, and confidence fuels courage. Fear thrives in uncertainty, but discipline creates certainty. Fear thrives in weakness, but discipline builds strength. Fear thrives in hesitation, but discipline builds momentum. Consider the story of the soldier who trains tirelessly, day after day, even when no battle is in sight. His discipline ensures that when war comes, courage will not fail him. Or the musician who practices scales endlessly, even when no audience is present. Her discipline ensures that when the spotlight shines, courage will carry her through. Discipline is the invisible preparation that makes visible courage possible. As the proverb says, "He who is faithful in little will be faithful in much." Discipline in small things builds strength for great things. Discipline is not glamorous. It is often hidden, unnoticed, and uncelebrated. Yet it is the foundation of greatness. The farmer rising before dawn, the student reading late into the night, the worker showing up day after day. These acts of discipline rarely make headlines, but they build lives of strength. Courage may take the first step, but discipline takes the next 1,000. Courage may face the storm, but discipline keeps the ship steady until the storm passes. Courage may light the fire, but discipline keeps it burning through the night. Thus, courage and discipline are partners. Courage without discipline is a sprint that ends too soon. Discipline without courage is motion without direction. But together, they create endurance, resilience, and victory. Courage takes the first step. Discipline takes the next 1,000. Courage begins the song. Discipline writes the symphony. Courage plants the seed. Discipline tends the garden until harvest. And so, discipline builds strength, not just physical strength, but mental, emotional, and spiritual strength. It is the daily choice to remain steadfast, the quiet power that sustains courage, and the foundation upon which all greatness is built. Chapter 5: Wisdom as Guide. Courage must be guided by wisdom, lest it become recklessness. Courage without wisdom is like a sword without a hand to wield it. It may strike, but it cannot discern where or when. Proverbs remind us, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore get wisdom. Wisdom is the compass that directs courage, ensuring that boldness does not become folly. It is wisdom that teaches us when to fight and when to wait, when to speak and when to listen, when to advance and when to retreat. Courage without wisdom may lead to unnecessary battles, but courage with wisdom leads to victory. Wisdom teaches that not every hill is worth dying on, not every battle is worth fighting, and not every opportunity is worth pursuing. Courage alone may push us forward, but wisdom ensures that our steps are righteous and purposeful. As another proverb says, the prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and suffer for it. Wisdom is the light that reveals which battles matter and which distractions must be ignored. It is the voice that whispers, "Not now," when impatience urges us to act, and now is the time when hesitation tempts us to wait. Courage is powerful, but wisdom makes courage fruitful. Storytelling reveals that the greatest leaders were not only brave, but wise. Solomon asked for wisdom, not riches, and his courage in judgment brought peace to his people. Nelson Mandela combined courage with wisdom, leading not with vengeance, but reconciliation, proving that true strength is not in retaliation, but in forgiveness. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke boldly against injustice, but his wisdom guided his courage into peaceful protest rather than violence, leaving a legacy that still inspires generations. These leaders remind us that courage without wisdom may win battles, but courage with wisdom wins hearts, builds nations, and leaves legacies. Wisdom ensures that courage is righteous, not reckless. It aligns bravery with truth, making courage not only powerful, but purposeful. Wisdom is the anchor that steadies courage in storms, the lens that clarifies vision in confusion, the guardrail that keeps courage from veering into destruction. Courage may give us strength to act, but wisdom gives us clarity to act rightly. Together, they form a partnership that transforms lives. Courage without wisdom is noise. Courage with wisdom is music. Courage without wisdom is fire uncontrolled. Courage with wisdom is fire that warms, guides, and illuminates. Wisdom is gained through humility, counsel, and experience. It is the elder's voice reminding the youth that haste leads to regret. It is the teacher's lesson that knowledge without application is wasted. It is the parent's guidance that discipline builds character. Proverbs declare, "In the multitude of counselors there is safety." Wisdom is not found in isolation, but in listening, learning, and reflecting. Courage may push us forward, but wisdom ensures we do not stumble blindly. Wisdom teaches us to pause before we act, to weigh consequences before we decide, and to seek counsel before we commit. Thus, wisdom is the guiding star of courage. It transforms boldness into righteousness, strength into justice, and bravery into legacy. To walk in courage without wisdom is to walk in darkness. To walk in courage with wisdom is to walk in light. And so, as we continue this journey, let us remember that courage must always be guided by wisdom, for wisdom is the principal thing. Courage may begin the journey, but wisdom ensures we arrive at the right destination. Chapter 6: Faith over Fear. Faith is the foundation of courage. Without faith, courage crumbles under pressure. It is faith that steadies the trembling heart, faith that strengthens the weary soul, and faith that whispers hope when fear shouts despair. As Scripture says, "The righteous are bold as a lion." Faith is the unseen anchor that holds us firm when storms rage, the invisible hand that lifts us when burdens weigh heavy, and the eternal light that shines when darkness surrounds. Courage without faith is fragile, but courage rooted in faith is unshakable. Faith believes in a greater strength beyond human ability. It trusts that storms will pass, that provision will come, and that justice will prevail. Faith transforms fear into fuel, giving courage its deepest roots. Fear says, "You are alone," but faith replies, "You are never forsaken." Fear says, "You will fail," but faith answers, "All things are possible." Fear magnifies obstacles, but faith magnifies God. As the proverb declares, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding." Faith is not blind optimism, it is confidence in promises greater than circumstances, assurance in truths deeper than appearances, and conviction in outcomes unseen. Life experience shows that those who trust in something greater than themselves endure longer. The parent who prays finds strength to keep nurturing even when resources are scarce. The leader who believes in justice finds courage to speak truth even when opposition rises. The worker who trusts in provision finds resilience to keep laboring even when wages seem insufficient. Faith renews courage daily, transforming despair into determination. As another proverb reminds us, those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. Faith is the well that never runs dry, the oil that keeps the lamp burning, the root that keeps the tree standing. Faith teaches that fear is temporary, but courage rooted in faith is eternal. Fear lasts for a moment, but faith endures for a lifetime. Fear trembles at uncertainty, but faith thrives in it. Fear collapses under pressure, but faith grows stronger in trials. Consider the story of Daniel in the lion's den. Fear would have silenced him, but faith gave him courage to pray openly. Consider the story of Esther before the king. Fear would have kept her silent, but faith gave her courage to speak and save her people. These stories remind us that faith is the soil in which courage grows, the foundation upon which bravery is built, and the secret that makes ordinary people extraordinary. Faith is not passive, it is active trust. It is the decision to walk forward even when the path is unseen, to sow seeds even when rain has not yet fallen, to speak truth even when silence seems safer. Faith is the courage to believe that what is invisible today will be visible tomorrow. As the proverb says, we walk by faith, not by sight. Faith is the bridge between fear and courage, the force that transforms trembling into triumph, and the power that makes courage eternal. Thus, faith over fear is not merely a phrase, it is a lifestyle. It is the daily choice to trust in promises greater than problems, to believe in strength greater than weakness, and to rest in hope greater than despair. Faith is the foundation of courage, the root of resilience, and the secret of victory. And so, let us declare boldly, faith over fear, courage over doubt, hope over despair. For when faith reigns, fear is silenced, and courage becomes eternal. Chapter 7. Stories of Everyday Heroes. Courage is not only found in history books, but in daily life. It is not confined to battlefields or political stages. It lives in kitchens, classrooms, farms, and workplaces. The mother who sacrifices for her children, the teacher who inspires despite challenges, the worker who perseveres despite hardship, all are heroes. Their names may never be written in headlines, but their courage shapes destinies. Proverbs remind us, better is little with righteousness than great revenues without right. Courage is not measured by fame, but by faithfulness. It is not about being celebrated by crowds, but about being steadfast in silence. Storytelling reveals countless unsung heroes. The farmer who plants despite drought, trusting that rain will come. The student who studies despite poverty, believing that knowledge will open doors. The leader who serves despite criticism, knowing that truth is worth defending. These are not fearless people, they are courageous people. Fear whispers to them daily, but courage speaks louder. Their lives remind us that courage is not rare. It is everywhere, waiting to be recognized. As another proverb says, a faithful man shall abound with blessings. Faithfulness in small acts of courage builds legacies greater than riches. Consider the mother who rises before dawn, preparing food for her children even when her body aches with exhaustion. Fear tells her she cannot endure, but courage tells her she must. Her sacrifice is courage lived daily. Consider the teacher who enters the classroom with limited resources, yet inspires students to dream beyond their circumstances. Fear tells her the task is too great, but courage tells her that one inspired child can change the world. Consider the worker who labors tirelessly, enduring criticism and hardship, yet refuses to compromise integrity. Fear tells him to quit, but courage tells him to persevere. These are everyday heroes, living testimonies that courage is not reserved for the extraordinary, but is woven into ordinary lives. Life experience teaches us that courage is often quiet, unnoticed, and uncelebrated. It is the father who works 2 jobs to provide, the youth who resists peer pressure to stand for righteousness, the elder who shares wisdom even when ignored. Their courage may not be applauded, but it is real, powerful, and transformative. As the proverb declares, the memory of the righteous is blessed. Everyday heroes leave behind legacies of strength, not because they were fearless, but because they chose courage in the face of fear. Their stories remind us that courage is not a distant ideal, it is a daily practice, a lived reality, and a gift to the world. Chapter 8: Courage in Failure. Failure is not the end, but the beginning of wisdom. It is the teacher that speaks in silence, the mirror that shows us where we must grow, and the fire that refines our character. Courage faces failure not with despair, but with determination. As the proverb says, fall 7 times and rise again. To rise after falling is to declare that failure is not a verdict, but a rehearsal for victory. Failure is not a tombstone, it is a stepping stone. It is not a prison, it is a classroom. And courage is the student who learns, adapts, and grows stronger with every lesson. Fear magnifies failure, convincing us it defines us. It whispers, "You are finished," when in truth, you are only beginning. Fear says, "You are weak," but courage replies, "I am learning." Fear says, "You cannot recover," but courage answers, "I will rise again." Courage reframes failure as a lesson, a stepping stone to success. As another proverb teaches, a wise man learns more from defeat than a fool from victory. Failure is not wasted when courage is present, for courage transforms mistakes into milestones, setbacks into setups, and defeats into determination. Life experience teaches that the most successful people failed often. Thomas Edison failed thousands of times before inventing the light bulb. Yet he famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Abraham Lincoln faced repeated defeats in elections, endured personal losses, and carried heavy burdens. Yet he rose to become one of the most respected presidents in history. J.K. Rowling faced rejection after rejection before her stories became beloved worldwide. These examples remind us that failure is not a barrier, but a bridge, and courage is the force that carries us across. As the proverb declares, defeat is not bitter unless you swallow it. Courage refuses to swallow defeat, it transforms it into fuel. Courage in failure is the refusal to quit. It is the belief that setbacks are setups for comebacks. It is the conviction that every fall is an opportunity to rise stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Courage says, I will not be defined by my mistakes, but by my response to them. It is the athlete who trains harder after losing, the student who studies deeper after failing, the leader who serves better after stumbling. Courage is the resilience that turns scars into stories, wounds into wisdom, and defeats into determination. As Scripture reminds us, though the righteous fall 7 times, they rise again. Failure is inevitable, but despair is optional. Courage chooses hope over despair, growth over regret, and persistence over surrender. It is the quiet strength that says, I will try again, even when the world says, give up. Courage in failure is not about avoiding pain, it is about enduring it, learning from it, and rising above it. And so, let us remember, failure is not the end, but the beginning of wisdom. Courage is the force that ensures failure is never final, but always formative. Chapter 9. Courage in Relationships. Relationships require courage to love, to forgive, to trust. Fear whispers that vulnerability will lead to pain, but courage teaches that vulnerability leads to connection. Fear says, protect yourself, build walls, stay guarded. But courage says, open your heart, build bridges, take the risk of love. As the proverb reminds us, a friend loves at all times. True relationships are not built on convenience, but on the courage to remain when it is easier to leave, to forgive when it is easier to resent, to trust when it is easier to doubt. Courage in relationships means choosing love even when hurt, forgiveness even when wronged, and trust even when betrayed. Love requires courage because it demands vulnerability. Forgiveness requires courage because it demands humility. Trust requires courage because it demands risk. Without courage, relationships remain shallow, fragile, and temporary. With courage, they grow deep, resilient, and lasting. As another proverb teaches, two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his companion. Courage ensures that when one stumbles, the other is there to lift them up. Storytelling reveals that the strongest bonds are forged through courageous acts of love. The spouse who forgives after betrayal, choosing reconciliation over resentment. The friend who stands firm in loyalty, even when others walk away. The parent who sacrifices daily, giving without expectation of return. These are acts of courage, not convenience. They remind us that relationships are not sustained by ease, but by endurance, not by perfection, but by persistence. As wisdom declares, greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. Courage in relationships is the willingness to lay down pride, selfishness, and fear for the sake of love. Life experience teaches that fear builds walls, but courage builds bridges. Fear isolates, but courage connects. Fear says, protect yourself, but courage says, give yourself. Fear magnifies differences, but courage celebrates them. Fear keeps score of wrongs, but courage erases them with forgiveness. Relationships thrive not because fear is absent, but because courage is present. The strongest marriages, friendships, and families are not those without conflict, but those with courage to face conflict, resolve it, and grow stronger through it. Courage in relationships is the glue that holds hearts together when storms threaten to tear them apart. Courage in relationships is not dramatic, it is daily. It is the husband who listens patiently when tired, the wife who forgives quickly when hurt, the friend who shows up when inconvenient, the child who honors parents even when misunderstood. These small acts of courage build trust, intimacy, and resilience. They prove that courage is not only about facing enemies, but about facing ourselves, our pride, our fears, our insecurities, and choosing love anyway. As the proverb says, better a neighbor nearby than a brother far away. Courage makes neighbors into family, strangers into friends, and companions into lifelong partners. Thus, courage in relationships builds bridges where fear builds walls. It transforms vulnerability into strength, forgiveness into healing, and trust into intimacy. Courage does not guarantee that relationships will be easy, but it guarantees that they will be meaningful. And so, let us remember, relationships require courage not once, but daily. For love without courage fades, but love with courage endures forever. Chapter 10. Courage in Leadership. Leadership demands courage. It is not simply about titles, positions, or authority. It is about responsibility, vision, and sacrifice. Fear tempts leaders to compromise, to remain silent, to seek comfort. Fear whispers, do not risk your reputation, do not challenge the status quo, do not stand against the tide. But courage calls leaders to stand for truth, even when unpopular. Courage calls them to speak when silence is easier, to act when hesitation feels safer, and to lead when retreat seems more convenient. As the proverb reminds us, where there is no vision, the people perish. Courageous leaders provide vision, guiding others through storms, offering hope when despair threatens, and lighting the path when darkness surrounds. Courage in leadership is not about recklessness, it is about righteous boldness. It is the ability to see beyond fear and to act with wisdom. Leaders without courage compromise principles for popularity, but leaders with courage uphold truth even when it costs them dearly. Leadership without courage is weak. Leadership with courage is transformative. As another proverb teaches, the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. He directs it like a watercourse, wherever he pleases. Courageous leaders understand that their authority is not for self-glory, but for service, not for domination, but for guidance, not for comfort, but for sacrifice. Storytelling reveals that the greatest leaders were courageous. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke despite threats, declaring that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. His courage inspired a movement that reshaped a nation. Winston Churchill stood firm despite opposition, rallying his people with words of resilience during the darkest days of war. His courage gave strength to millions who faced despair. Nelson Mandela endured decades of imprisonment, yet emerged not with vengeance, but with reconciliation, proving that true leadership is not about retaliation, but about restoration. These leaders remind us that courage in leadership is not about avoiding fear, but about facing it, mastering it, and transforming it into vision. Life experience teaches that leadership without courage collapses under pressure. A leader who fears criticism will compromise integrity. A leader who fears failure will avoid responsibility. A leader who fears sacrifice will abandon vision. But a leader with courage inspires trust, builds resilience, and creates legacy. Courage in leadership is the ability to stand firm when storms rage, to speak truth when lies abound, and to act with conviction when compromise tempts. As the proverb says, the righteous are bold as a lion. Courageous leaders are lions among men, not because they roar loudly, but because they stand firmly, guiding others with strength and vision. Courage in leadership is not dramatic, it is daily. It is the manager who defends his team against unfair criticism, the teacher who stands for truth in the classroom, the parent who leads a family with integrity, the community leader who serves faithfully despite limited resources. These acts of courage may not make headlines, but they build trust, inspire loyalty, and transform lives. Leadership is not about being above others, it is about standing with them, carrying burdens alongside them, and showing them the way forward when the path feels impossible. Thus, leadership demands courage. Without courage, leadership is fragile, shallow, and temporary. With courage, leadership is strong, resilient, and transformative. Courage in leadership is the force that inspires nations, builds communities, and shapes destinies. It is the daily choice to stand for truth, to act with integrity, and to lead with vision. And so, let us remember, leadership without courage is weak, but leadership with courage is eternal. Chapter 11. Courage in Legacy. Legacy is built not by comfort, but by courage. Comfort may create ease, but it rarely creates stories worth remembering. Fear leaves behind regret. Courage leaves behind inspiration. Legacy is the echo of your life after you are gone, the imprint of your choices that continues to speak long after your voice is silent. Proverbs remind us, the memory of the righteous is blessed. Courage ensures that your memory is one of strength, not weakness, one of faithfulness, not fearfulness. Legacy is not about wealth or fame, but about the courage to live rightly, to stand firmly, and to love deeply. Courage in legacy means living with the awareness that your choices ripple beyond your lifetime. Every act of courage plants seeds in the soil of history. The parent who raises children with integrity leaves behind a legacy of righteousness. The teacher who inspires students with wisdom leaves behind a legacy of knowledge. The leader who stands for truth leaves behind a legacy of justice. These legacies are not measured in riches, but in influence, not in possessions, but in principles. As another proverb teaches, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. That inheritance is not merely material, it is spiritual, moral, and eternal. Life experience shows that those who lived courageously are remembered long after they are gone. Their stories inspire generations, proving that courage outlives fear. Consider the legacy of Abraham Lincoln, whose courage in leadership preserved a nation. Consider the legacy of Mother Teresa, whose courage in compassion uplifted the forgotten. Consider the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr., whose courage in justice reshaped society. These individuals remind us that legacy is not about what you gain, but about what you give. Not about what you keep, but about what you leave behind. Courage ensures that your story is not forgotten because it is written in the lives of those you touched. Courage in legacy is not reserved for the famous. It is available to all. The father who works tirelessly to provide, the mother who sacrifices daily for her children, the elder who shares wisdom with the young all leave legacies of courage. Their names may not be known worldwide, but their influence shapes families, communities, and futures. Legacy is not about recognition, it is about impact. Fear leaves behind silence, but courage leaves behind songs. Fear leaves behind emptiness, but courage leaves behind fullness. Fear leaves behind regret, but courage leaves behind inspiration. Thus, legacy is built not by comfort, but by courage. It is the daily choice to live with integrity, to act with boldness, and to love with faithfulness. Legacy is not accidental, it is intentional. Every decision becomes a seed, every action a testimony, every sacrifice a foundation for those who will come after you. Courage ensures that your legacy is not shallow, but profound, not temporary, but eternal. And so, let us remember, legacy is not about wealth or fame, but about the courage to live rightly. For when courage reigns, your memory will be blessed, your influence will endure, and your story will inspire generations yet unborn. Chapter 12. Courage Always. Courage is not seasonal. It is constant. It is not a garment to be worn only in winter storms or summer trials. It is the armor of life, meant to be worn daily. Fear may rise, but courage must rise higher. Fear may whisper, but courage must speak louder. Fear may attempt to paralyze, but courage must press forward. As the proverb reminds us, be strong and of good courage. Courage is not a fleeting emotion, but a daily choice, a lifelong commitment, a rhythm of living that transforms ordinary days into extraordinary testimonies. Courage is not a moment, but a lifestyle. It is the declaration, courage over fear always. Courage is the decision to rise each morning with resolve, to face each challenge with strength, and to embrace each opportunity with boldness. It is the worker who chooses integrity over compromise, the parent who chooses sacrifice over ease, the leader who chooses truth over popularity. Courage is not reserved for crises, it is lived in the daily grind, the quiet moments, the unseen choices. As another proverb teaches, the just shall live by faith. Courage is faith in action, lived not once, but always. Storytelling reveals that those who choose courage daily live lives of impact. They face storms with strength, challenges with resolve, and opportunities with boldness. Consider the soldier who stands guard not only in battle, but in routine watchfulness. His courage is not occasional, it is constant. Consider the nurse who serves tirelessly, day after day, even when exhaustion tempts her to quit. Her courage is not seasonal, it is daily. Consider the elder who shares wisdom faithfully, even when ignored. His courage is not dramatic, it is consistent. These lives remind us that courage is not about moments of glory, but about patterns of faithfulness. Life experience teaches that courage must be renewed daily. Yesterday's courage cannot fight today's battles. Yesterday's victories cannot win today's wars. Courage must be chosen again and again, like breath drawn each morning, like steps taken each day. Fear will always attempt to return, but courage must always rise to meet it. As the proverb says, "Do not grow weary in doing good, for in due season you will reap if you do not give up." Courage is perseverance, the refusal to quit, the determination to endure. It is the daily choice to rise above fear, not once, not sometimes, but always. Thus, courage always is not merely a phrase, it is a way of life. It is the anthem of the righteous, the rhythm of the faithful, the legacy of the bold. Courage always means that fear never has the final word, that doubt never has the final say, that despair never has the final victory. Courage always means that every day, every choice, every step is marked by strength, faith, and resolve. And so, let us declare boldly, courage is not seasonal. It is constant. Courage is not occasional. It is eternal. Courage is not temporary. It is forever. Courage over fear always. Closing summary: courage over fear always. Fear is a shadow that seeks to dominate the heart, but courage is the eternal flame that dispels it. Throughout this journey, we have discovered that courage is not reckless bravado, but righteous strength, guided by wisdom, discipline, and faith. It is the daily choice to rise above doubt, to act despite trembling, and to trust that the path of righteousness leads to victory. We began by uncovering the nature of fear, learning that it is a shadow without substance, magnified only by imagination. We then defined courage as deliberate strength, not recklessness, and saw that the first step is the most powerful declaration of faith. We learned that discipline builds strength, sustaining courage when emotions waver, and that wisdom guides courage, ensuring boldness is righteous, not reckless. We explored how faith over fear anchors courage in eternal truth, and how stories of everyday heroes remind us that courage is not rare, but lived daily in ordinary lives. We saw that courage in failure transforms setbacks into comebacks, and that courage in relationships builds bridges where fear builds walls. We reflected on courage in leadership, which inspires nations and transforms communities, and on courage in legacy, which ensures our memory is blessed and our influence endures. Finally, we declared that courage always is not a moment, but a lifestyle, a daily anthem that silences fear and empowers destiny. Courage is the seed of progress, the foundation of leadership, the strength of relationships, and the essence of legacy. It transforms failure into wisdom, obstacles into opportunities, and fear into fuel. To live courageously is to live fully, to embrace life's storms with faith, and to walk boldly into destiny. As Scripture reminds us, be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. So let this be the anthem of your life, courage over fear always. Let it guide your steps, shape your choices, and define your legacy. For when courage reigns, fear is silenced, and the world is changed by the boldness of one heart that refused to bow to shadows. Thank you for listening. If this audiobook inspired you, please like, share, and subscribe to AI Audiobooks Empire. Remember, courage is not a moment but a choice. Live boldly and let courage always rise above fear. The end.